Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the invisible forces that can make or break a business. Think of this as a survival guide to the world that exists right outside a company's front door. You know, it's the question that probably keeps executives up at night. You can have an amazing product, a brilliant team, a rock-solid strategy, and still, you could end up on the corporate scrap heap. So what gives? Well, it turns out the deadliest threats, and frankly, the biggest opportunities, they don't always come from inside the company. They come from the world outside, a world that is constantly shifting and completely rewriting the rules of the game without asking for permission. To really get a handle on this, you got to think of the external environment in two layers. First, there's your immediate neighborhood, the daily hustle. And then there are these massive, invisible global forces that can change absolutely everything overnight. Let's break it down. So first up is what's called the task environment. Now, that's just a fancy name for a company's immediate neighborhood. These are the players you're dealing with every single day. This is the front line, the daily battleground. Just look at the rivalry between Zomato and Swiggy. This is a perfect example. It's this constant battle for your dinner order that forces both companies to innovate, relentlessly. Zomato launches a new loyalty program and boom, Swiggy hits back with faster delivery promises. Their actions directly shape each other's strategy, day in and day out. And it's not just your direct competitors, right? Think about your customers. All of a sudden, they expect 10-minute grocery delivery. That demand can force you to completely reinvent your entire operation. Your suppliers? They're absolutely critical. We all saw how the global chip shortage could halt entire car production lines. And finally, you've got the regulators. Agencies like the FSSI or the RBI. They're basically the referees, setting the rules that everyone on the field has to play by.
Okay, so dealing with these daily players is one thing. That's the job. But what happens when the very ground beneath your feet starts to shift? When the rules of the entire game are rewritten by forces far, far beyond your control?
Well, that brings us to the macro environment. If your daily neighborhood is like the local weather, the macro environment is like the huge ocean currents. It affects every single ship in the harbor, from a tiny fishing boat to a massive cargo carrier. Business analysts are always scanning for these shifts, using frameworks like Pestle to keep an eye on the political, economic, social, and technological changes on the horizon. Let's start with probably the most powerful of these global forces, the economic environment. This is the financial weather system that every single business, big or small, has to navigate. So what is it really? Simply put, it's everything from a country's GDP growth and inflation rates to the government's big decisions on taxes and interest rates. And these aren't just abstract numbers you see on the news. They have real, tangible effects on a company's ability to operate, to hire, and to grow. You can kind of think of it in three parts. First, what are the overall economic conditions? Is the economy booming, or are we in a bust? Second, what are the government's policies? What are they doing with taxes and interest rates that could help or hurt you? And third, what's the fundamental economic system you're operating in? Like India's mixed economy, where both private companies and the government play a huge role. A perfect real-world example of this is Tesla. Here you have one of the world's most valuable, most ambitious companies, and it put its massive plans for India on hold. Why? Because of uncertainty around national tax and import rules. It just goes to show you how a single government policy decision can completely alter the strategic course of a global giant. But hey, economic policy is just one piece of this giant puzzle. Think about the other forces. There's the relentless pace of technology. AI isn't just a headline, it's rewriting entire industries. There are political shifts, where new trade agreements can open up massive new markets or shut old ones down. But maybe the most fundamental force of all is the human one, the demographic environment. Because at the end of the day, people are the market. Think about it. Just a country's age structure creates entirely different markets. A nation with a huge youth population, that drives massive demand for schools, toys, and the latest tech gadgets. But a country with an aging population? Well, that creates a booming market for healthcare, wellness, and retirement services. And where people live is just as important. The urban population, with higher incomes and a faster pace of life, is fueling demand for convenience, technology, and modern retail. At the same time, the rural population represents this huge, often untapped market for essential goods, but it requires a completely different strategy when it comes to pricing and distribution. And the little details really matter here. The rise of women in the workforce and their growing income has fueled entire industries, from wellness to fashion. Higher education levels make it easier for companies like Amazon and Flipkart to grow their online shopping base. Even the simple shift from large joint families to smaller nuclear families creates new demand for appliances like washing machines and microwaves. And of course, a growing middle class with more money to spend, that's the engine behind the success of brands like Ola, Uber, and Boat.
So, after looking at all this, what's the ultimate lesson? I mean, staring down these huge, uncontrollable forces can feel, well, overwhelming. But here's the thing. The most successful businesses don't try to fight the ocean currents. They learn to be expert sailors.
So great management, then, isn't really about controlling the world outside. That's impossible. It's about seeing the changes coming, understanding what they mean for your business, and then adapting your strategy faster and smarter than anyone else. It's all about mastering the art of response. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Look at your own world, your own industry. Of all these powerful and visible forces we've talked about, the disruptive tech, the economic climate, new regulations, the changing face of your customers, which one do you think will be the real game changer of the next 10 years? Because the answer to that question, well, that could be the key to survival.